Watching Beauty and the Beast for the first time is such a treat. You gorge on the magic of Disney animation. You sing along with catchy musical numbers, and you empathize with characters that are all memorable. By the end, the Beast's curse is lifted, once and for all, and finally we can see the Beast in his human form. Holy shit! What happened to this guy? He looks like a deer in headlights. Well, he's actually a buffalo, and gorilla, and lion, and bear, and boar, and wolf.
And brat.
But not a deer. Definitely not a deer. The film went out of its way to tease us with flashes of his portrait. I can't help but feel a little let down by this face reveal. Even the kind-hearted Belle is frozen in disbelief. This is why people prefer him in his beast form. Even the writers didn't give him a real human name in the film. He's just called Beast, even to his face.
Beast!
Okay, so maybe the prince looks a little less weird in other shots. But this is the shot people remember. The guy was stabbed, and his bones painfully dislocated and refused. And this is the thanks he gets.
Belle, it's me.
I have questions.
Okay, who's responsible for this? Let's dig a little deeper into the animation process. The old school animation process. And see if we can solve this decades-old mystery. The Beast supervising animator was the legendary Glen Keane, who also animated Ariel, Aladdin, and Tarzan. You might think Glen is to blame. Glen even spoke about how time was running short, and he was struggling with the transformation scene. Maybe in the midst of pressing deadlines and lack of inspiration, the prince's reveal was rushed.
This is the moment, this is what I was born for, and I don't have time to animate it. And I went to Don Hahn, and I said, Don, your schedule is that I've got to animate this moment here. He said, Glenn, but forget it. Just do whatever it is that you feel, forget the deadline, just take the time that you need.
Glenn headed to the Norton Simon Museum in Pasadena and found inspiration through the sculptures by Michelangelo, like the slaves only partially freed from the stone, and Rodin's Burgers of Calais, which are not as delicious as they sound. The sculptural influence is clear in the pencil test animation, and it's beautiful. In the final version, effect animation was added, with light shining from his fingers, and wrist, and toes, possibly his nipples, and belly button. But this rough animation precedes those effects. The prince's body changes form, unobscured, until finally we see this. Lesson learned. Never doubt the talent of Glen Keane. Looks like you're off the hook, Glenn. This pencil drawing of the prince looks so much better. So how did we go from this to this? Well, as good as these pencil tests are, they're a little rough. So it gets passed to the cleanup artists. And these cleanup artists have the unenviable job of cleaning up rough animation. Maybe this is where things went wrong. And a lot can go wrong. Imagine you're given this messy drawing. Where should the final line go? Here? Or maybe here? This is why character model sheets exist. They help guide a team of artists draw characters consistently. Unlike CG animation, where assets can be reused in each shot, in 2D animation, different individuals must redraw characters hundreds of times, which can lead to varying results, especially in Beauty and the Beast, which had a much shorter production schedule than usual. You need a balance of good communication, artistic skill, and knowledge to infer the intent of the key animator, while keeping the character on model. Maybe you're thinking this drawing was intended to be more like concept art, but it's in the rough cut of the film, and it fits in with the other keyframes presented, so let's look at some of the key differences it has with the final image. Everyone's face is unique, but people tend to look a little bit better when their eyes are about one eye length apart, like in this drawing. In the final shot, his eyes are drifting apart further than... never mind. You'll also notice that the original just seems more solid. It has mass. Why is that? Well, it's likely because of the hard shadows on the face, which feeds us subtle information about the light source location and the form of the head. the light is actually coming up from the bottom right. Notice how the light is cast onto the underside of the chin and nose, as well as skin above the eyelids. This is important because instead of looking like he's flaring his nostrils as hard as he can, it looks more like we're positioned slightly below the face, looking up. Naturally, we'd see the underside of the nose. And whereas the original head looks a little too long, we see that a lot of that extra space at the bottom of the face is supposed to be perceived as the underside of the chin. So why doesn't this come across as effectively in the colored version? Well, a lot of this has to do with the color application itself. For Beauty and the Beast, the scanned cleanup drawings were digitally colored using the then new Computer Animation Production System, or CAPS. Before CAPS, Disney used to paint on the back of clear acetate called cells. Digital coloring was not only cheaper and faster, but it could simulate an airbrushed color application. This feathers the line of a colored area, such as the line between light and shadow. Choice of color is also important. The contrast between light and shadow is so small that it's actually difficult to even see some of these shadows if you're not looking for them. The choice to feather the shadows, along with lack of contrast between shadowed and illuminated skin, essentially gives us vague visual information, so the illusion of depth and three-dimensionality is less effective. Compare this to some of Disney's other examples of bold lighting. We see that effective use of light and shadow in the appropriate emotional scenes gives us a ton of information about the forms of these faces. So who can we blame for giving us our awkward introduction to the prince? No, not her. Well, most likely it was the production pipeline and the processes within. The pipeline at a huge studio like Walt Disney Animation slowly stripped away the original intent of the animator, and left us with something a little off-putting. Things get lost in translation. There's lack of communication between departments. Mistakes can be made along the way. Looming deadlines can make a finished scene often better than a perfect scene. All of this makes a single frame's journey, from rough drawing to colored cell, fraught with human error and opinion. It's a side effect of the most integral aspect of 2D animation, that organic human touch. A lot of the Disney Renaissance films are rough around the edges if you look closely, and that's okay. It's the imperfections that are part of the beauty and charm.
And for Belle, it didn't matter what he looked like in the beginning or the end, which is why, even with an ugly prince, Beauty and the Beast is my personal favorite Disney animated feature.